And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Okay, there we go. I wasn't writing for a minute. All right, the first item that we'll go to here is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of the previous meeting as written.
Yep. I'll second that.
Any discussion? Yeah, okay, all right.
Hey.
Julie, to sit, get seated and.
What's this birthday stuff?
Huh?
I heard somebody had a birthday.
Yeah,
I should have remembered that. I don't know why I didn't.
it's okay.
Looking forward to the
Hello,
weather.
Happy New Year.
Oh, Happy New Year to
Looking
you.
forward to the weather.
Oh, yeah.
Good holiday.
already canceled.
I got a big driveway, and it takes me
It's always good.
3 or 4 times to go out there.
Yeah.
That they can end up doing it, because with my legs, I just
Willie, it's time to hire
can't
somebody.
do what I used to.
You got any neighbor kids? I know what that's like.
Too long to shovel, let me tell you. It's gotta be snow blowed or,
That's why I do the plow. You know, I mean, I got it on my tractor, but.
So as far as the minutes,
Yeah,
that's it.
we're on the minutes, we're on the approval, we have a motion and a second,
All right,
and, when you,
I read them.
okay,
I'm good to vote.
all right. Then we'll go on to the vote.
Yes,
Bev,
yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Will,
abstain.
and yes. Next item on the agenda is the advisory pre-town bill accepted by the town accountant. I have nothing on this. This was something that Jeff was handling, so
Mr. Chairman, I do.
yes.
I'd like to apologize to the committee. It's my fault that you didn't have the budget with me getting sick and stuff.
We'll have to beat you.
I had a copy of the invoice, and because with me getting sick, it was misplaced. I talked to Jeff about it, but he had already since gone and got an additional one. I put that as part of the packet that I'm gonna be giving him for this year, as well as for him to do the annual report for this coming year.
No, I don't think that, I'm gonna worry about it, because when he brought it in here, apparently the office wasn't open, so he had to probably come back again. Anyhow, it's paid, so it's one less thing to worry about.
Do we want to put this forward to next meeting or do we need to do anything on this?
Is it
I think
paid?
it was
It's
just
paid as far as I know, I just don't
Right.
have any.
If it's paid, then it's paid. I don't know why we have to keep discussing it.
Okay.
I think we're good. I think all we wanted to do was get it paid.
I will take that suggestion.
All righty.
The next item on the agenda is the fiscal year 2019 advisory budget submitted to the TA. I believe Paul submitted that?
Yes, I took the information that Will had provided and put it into the format that the town administrator had requested all submissions to be in, and sent that out and copied this committee. I think I sent that out on New Year's Day.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, before you begin that, I'll just like to take a talk to the submission since I wasn't here. Just as a reminder for everybody, I saw that the administrator had a question about the emergency reserve money. We've been very, very conservative because we haven't had much money. He cut it back. He ended up indicating that he had gotten some figures from me. And yes, I did provide those on what we had approved, not how much money was actually requested. There were some that were requested and they were too high, and we ended up having to work those down over a number of years. The other thing I'd like to remind everybody is that during the year, this last year, there was at least 3 instances for the emergency reserve that should have been used. And the administrator chose to go a different route. Examples, buying a $20,000 truck when we lost the truck, repairing the fire truck, $18,000, because they didn't have enough in their budget for the repair. He used somebody else's. And typically, historically, the firemen have kept and repaired their own. We also had a roof issue, which also was unexpected and unapproved. All 3 of those were unexpected, unapproved. That should have come before the advisory. The other thing that you should look at when, and I think that you had that discussion, I'm sorry I wasn't here last meeting, was the fact that snow and ice, years ago it was 125, it has been increased to 165. And even after it's been increased to 165, it was overspent last year. Well, unbudgeted, unanticipated, that's where some of the money comes from. And if it's not requested at the end of the year per se, that type of money, typically, if you look at other finance committees, gets transferred to the ice and snow, because you don't want to end up going with a deficit into the next year. You can't end up going deficit spend, as we know already. But those are the issues that when you look at the emergency reserve, 1% of the entire budget is not a heck of a lot. If you will do a review of other communities our size, you'll see emergency reserve numbers in excess of $100,000 and up. I've looked at that from other and said, we have to take and end up trying to manage that within the amount of revenue that comes in. So the request that you talked about at the last meeting of 80,000, I think is very much in line with the fact that if you added the $38,000 plus the roof to what we already had, it brings it up to $80,000. Those items that he went into the expense budget for maintenance should have been used, that money should have been used for maintenance for other stuff. You don't request that money in a budget because you don't need it for maintenance. If something comes unanticipated, that's what the emergency reserve is for. That's basically why the finance or advisory committees have been set up in Massachusetts, is to take and end up addressing those issues and having them come before them. Enough said on that. I'll let you look at his response.
Thank you, Will. And I just want to reiterate something that I said that, that I talked about last week, because I being new to this, I looked up what's going on and what the rules and requirements are and so forth. And from what I gathered, it's chapter 40, section 6 that mandates the emergency reserve.
Yep.
Or that is
Yes.
the overriding regulation.
That's correct.
And that regulation states that up to 5%
Yep.
of the previous year's fiscal budget. So
That's correct.
we went into it and the number's like 413,000 is where it's capped. Well, we, as a town, we know that that's not,
That's not right.
a realistic number for us. But I think it should be a goal. Even though, it's a high but we should be able to do that. If if everything's managed beautifully,
Right.
we should be able to.
Other communities, other communities have tight budgets, in all departments. And if it's unanticipated and unbudgeted for, that's why they would end up having a higher reserve to end up looking at what that unexpected expense is. My surprise is that we should probably end up inviting the administrator to end up talking about the budgeted items here. He talks to each individual department head, as well as other committees about their budget. I would like to see him come so we can have a dialogue with him about what our submission is. I don't think that's unreasonable.
And I was gonna say, one other thing I wanted to add to your list of items that this fund could have been used for, was the Sanders also.
Yeah.
Because that was brought up at the time, and I remember the administrator stating that he didn't want to use the reserve because our reserve was so small that we'd be using a large chunk of it so early in the fiscal year.
That's correct.
And that is the account that type of issue should be coming from, in, the way I read
Right,
chapter 40.
right. He points out that it was too small, then why shouldn't it be bigger to end up taking into consideration these type of things?
Exactly.
It's very clear to me. I mean, thank you for bringing that up, because I was also thinking about that earlier today when I saw his.
And to continue with this, I just wanted to say that we have received a response back from the town administrator asking for kind of our reasoning for the $80,000. And just before I left to come here, I noticed that Jeff had responded. I don't know if everybody's got a
Why don't you
chance to
read
take
it?
a look at this.
Why don't you read
You'd
it?
like me to read this in?
Yeah.
All right, we'll do
Before
that.
you start, could you, what caused Bennett to?
that out. I thought I printed that out, but I
Okay,
can't.
because I
find
got
it.
the
There's a
email thread, and it says to Carter, and it's responding to something that he obviously sent to the advisory committee, and I don't have that.
When, yesterday,
Yeah,
the town administrator, I submitted the budget on Monday,
1st, right.
January 1st. Yesterday was the first time he saw that and sent a few questions regarding our budget submission, including a question about how do we arrive at the $80,000 for the reserve fund recommendation.
okay, and he sent that to
And
you?
I thought, he sent it to me, and I thought he had
Okay.
responded to the whole distribution.
Okay,
Because you
'cause
got my original distribution,
I got
correct?
you, have the whole thing, I have
So
the
I
sheets,
forwarded
yeah.
off it, when I realized today that you
All
had
right.
received it, I sent it out late morning, I guess. today.
Okay. No, I just didn't know what the original,
Did you not
impetus
receive
was-
that one?
I didn't
The one I
receive
forwarded?
that, no.
Oh, I apologize.
I've got the response to something.
No, I did that. I will forward that.
Thank you.
Sorry for not including that, Julie.
No, it's fine, I just didn't, I'm reading it and I'm going, well, it seems to be he's responding to something. I don't think he just wrote this off the top of his head, so.
Okay. Do you wanna,
Yeah, you can do that one.
I don't think I got it
That's where I
either.
sent it to.
All right, let's see.
You wanna form a
What time
motion
was
to
it?
read that?
I sent that at 12:44, sorry, it was
Twelve.
this afternoon.
Just wondering if she wants to read the
All right.
question, that's all.
Okay. Yeah, I got it.
Julie, would you like to read the question that generated this response? You got it? Is that what you,
Get it, yeah.
because you make a good point that this really wouldn't make sense and I don't have it with me.
Yeah. Why don't, Paul, do you mind reading it? Because you have it. It hasn't come through yet.
Um,
I don't have the-
Okay, just a few questions. Should we address them in the order that he's asked them? Or do we want to just focus on his question regarding the reserve fund?
Probably just the reserve fund, because that's mostly
All
what
right.
this focuses on.
What is the rationale for the .0098 reserve fund? That is an odd ratio I don't think I've ever seen before. And the answer to that question was, well, we voted 80,000, we kind of just rounded it, so I just expressed it as a percent of the, last year's expense budget. And it came out to, less than 1%. Further, given draws out of the reserve fund over the past few years, FY 12 through 16, came from an email from a W Spring email. FY 17 and 18 came from the records here, and he provided some actual use of the reserve fund information. And then finally, he's asking, what is the rationale for an $80,000 request if we are able to more properly budget sub-accounts closer to need and slowly address the snow and ice deficit? So that was it. So that was,
Okay,
What-
so this is the response to that.
Correct.
Okay.
And I'll read the response now?
Yep.
Thank you, Paul. And Jeff has written a response that he sent off to the town administrator this afternoon, and I'll read that. It says, Carter, a few of the reasons for the desire of the advisory committee to establish a reserve fund in the amount of $80,000 is a multifaceted approach. The committee looked at the recommendations, guidelines from the Mass DOR, DLS. The committee did scale back some, otherwise the requested number would have been too much for a one-time increase. The committee feels that slowly increasing the town's reserve fund demonstrates that the town is heading towards a much better financial position than in the past. The town is moving forward rather than backwards, and as in reducing the reserve fund, which in our opinion, excuse me, I think I screwed up here, which in our opinion shows the town is spending more and does not have a sufficient financial cushion. Since there was no movement towards putting any of the recent certified free cash towards any of the town stabilization funds, which the committee feels would have been a positive move with regards to the town establishing a bond rating. So with no apparent will on the part of the selectmen to increase or establish a savings plan, advisory committee feels there is justification for an increase to the town reserve fund, rather than a backwards move, as we've done the last time around, drop from 50,000 to 35,000. Advisory discussed and voted that the town should move towards an increase in reserve funding. It is the opinion of the advisory that this demonstrates the town has sufficient revenue sources and numbers to not only operate the town from a financially sustainable position, it also has the financial ability to set aside an adequate amount for emergencies without multiple financial transfers. This can jeopardize things, from a budgetary viewpoint. Remember the fire department pump issue. Again, advisory feels this move can and will add or aid the town as it moves forward towards a bond rating. Since the selectmen left an amount of certified free cash on the table, advisory hopes this year the selectmen will use some of the money to increase the town's stabilization funds. Again, the committee, this would be financially prudent, smart, and demonstrate Templeton is on the move towards financial stability. The advisory committee understands you may recommend something else, and the selectmen will vote on what to present to town meeting. The committee hopes we demonstrate strong agreement on a financial path for the town as we move forward. Whatever the number turns out to be, I believe advisory will make known its recommendations to town meeting by way of its written report to the town per Templeton bylaws. We hope this is one area where we can agree on common ground. Jeff Bennett, Chairman of the Advisory Committee. Comments?
I called Jeff and I told him that I thought that was an extremely well-written letter. You know, I'm not happy with the way the new budget is tending to go. I don't believe that people do not want to see a line item budget. If we could begin to budget our money and stay within a budget, and if you can't, you have a problem, you come to the reserve fund. This is how it is supposed to work. We've had enough years of people playing games and moving money all over the place. And I feel that this would be a good move if they would do it. If they don't, then we'll take it to the people. That's how I feel. That's
Thank
my
you, Bev.
opinion.
Let me just add to that.
Mm-hmm.
The budgeting process as we have it has different account numbers for a lot of things. By collapsing it the way they have and presenting it to the town does not adequately let the town see where their money is going on an individual basis. They've collapsed the individual account numbers into one generalized account number. I believe that that was probably motivated by the fact that they have had, in the last couple of years, a number of budget to actuals that showed deficits. And we, as a committee, questioned those. By questioning them, maybe they felt that that was too many questions for them to answer as far as the accounting process. And that if they generalized and collapsed it into multiple amounts where general, it wouldn't show any deficits. Well, that's kind of my opinion of why they collapsed it to the generalized.
Right.
Thank you, Bill. Julie?
I agree with what Will said and with what Bev said. I believe that response to Carter's questions about why we increased the amount for the emergency reserve was an excellent response. It's demonstrated exactly what we had talked about at our meeting prior. As far as asking too many questions about the budget versus actual and the change in the format, I think that, Will, you're right on target. They want to be able to hide things. But as we go forward, there are little clues that back in May, before the end of the year, I had brought up that the dispatch account was underfunded, severely underfunded. It wasn't going to make it to June 30th. And we were told, oh, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. We're going to take it out of the E11 grant, 911 grant.
Yep.
Well, now, when you read the, some of the updates from the town accountant that have been posted lately, they've kind of been hidden in the town administrator reports, but it seems that they have to go and rebuild the books for that grant, the 911 grant, back from 13 all the way up. So I think the concerns that I expressed and that we expressed as a committee were justified, because there are certain rules and regs that you have to follow for grant money. And it wasn't to say, gotcha, it was just a heads up that there's a deficit in this account. So the solution was to change it so nobody knows how much money is in anyone's account. Which brings us to a point where if someone comes in and asks for a transfer
How are you gonna have to?
from a department, how are we going to know what they have in their budget, what's remaining in their budget? We're not going to know. how are we going to approve a transfer?
It makes it much more difficult for us to do
Yeah,
that.
I'm not comfortable with guessing. You know, that's my take on it.
It, basically, by collapsing it, you get rid of the transparency as to where the money is in all the accounts. And if there's an issue, it's not visible, as Julie said. If it's visible, at least we can look at it and bring it to somebody's attention and say, what happened here? It could be very justifiable that
Be a mistake.
there was an issue in posting something incorrectly. Or we've overspent, and we need to get those in check. That's basically what the job of this finance committee is, that they can end up looking out for the finances of this community, for all the taxpayers.
What I'm concerned with is that the federal government is going to push more on the state government. And I'm very worried that, maybe not next year or the year after, that we will not get the money from the state that we depend on. It's happened to us before, it'll happen again. And if we don't have our books in order, and if we have to hide things, then we are not ever going to have the kind of government that we need, an honest and open government. If we have the money, we can spend it. If we don't, we can't. And no one will ever learn, because they keep doing the same things over and over and expecting different results. It doesn't work that way.
Thank you, Beth. All right, anybody else have anything related to that?
Well, we've got training coming up on the Vader system, January 9th.
It is, okay.
You folks have had a lot more experience, or some of you have had more experience with the budget versus actual reports from prior years. So I can't really comment on, what's changed. The impression I have in general is that they've done the departments have done a better job in terms of managing their expenses against the budget. Yes, we had some unexpected expenditures that weren't budgeted to begin with, that I think we've detailed here as to should have come out of the emergency reserve fund, but I don't know that that's the case. I'm not at that point where I think that's the case, that we've lost any visibility into the true workings or the true expenses versus budget at this point, and I'll reserve, that until I see what's available in the Vader training.
I have a concern about the fact that we're gonna go into VEDA training, per se. We don't know if they've collapsed this into one generalized account number versus what was actually in the budget book, and whether we'll be able to get it to that account number that's in the budget. That's number one.
Find out.
The second thing on that is, if we still have that capability, that's an easy setup of a report by the accountant, which should have continued, in my opinion. But if we create it down to the individual account number, and we see a deficit on the individual account number that's collapsed down to one or other, and we go ask a question for that department as to why this is overspent, they're not gonna see that, because they see a collapsed number.
We think. We're not sure. We don't know
find
that
out.
for certain yet.
Well, they issue that budget to actual, it goes out to all the department heads, including us, the collapsed one.
So
If you look at the budget to actual that they put out in the last one, it's collapsed, and it goes out to all the department heads. And that's what they see.
Okay,
Through
and
the
you're
back-
saying that report doesn't give us the information that we need to be
That's
able
correct.
to see variances.
Right, and it doesn't give them a picture of individual accounts within their department. Through the back channels, I have heard that that's an issue for an individual that has talked to one of the department heads. That they don't get to see that, and they have no way of knowing on an individual account basis.
Well, that'll be something we should address during our training, maybe see what level of visibility we do have. Can we break things out by department?
I have,
Well, that's something that I was just wondering with what you two were discussing here, is that the individual, correct me if I'm wrong, Will.
Yeah.
But from what you're saying, the individual departments don't get what you'd call an exploded view
That's correct.
of their own budget.
That's correct.
They get this collapsed form,
Right.
just like we do.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, I can see where that, could be, let's say, I'm sure it's convenient.
Yeah.
But like you said, the detail's lost,
They don't know the details
seem.
within their budget and whether they're managing the individual account numbers correctly.
Now, I too hope that what Paul was referring to is that inside the Veda system, if you do get that exploded view, if you can see that exploded view.
I do have a question about the training. How is that gonna work? Next Tuesday, they have, at 8:30, a department head meeting in this room.
This conference room's not available. They said the other room with the big conference room table, she would reserve.
So we're going somewhere else?
I thought it was in this building, no?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's down the hall where they moved
Okay, okay.
inspectional.
I didn't see that.
yeah,
I mean,
Yeah,
Swap the offices.
because all I saw was in his report, a 8:30 meeting, and I had seen what we were scheduled for, training at 9:00.
All right. So, we're all good with where we're at? The next item on the agenda here is the advisory committee, annual town report submission, format and content. Again, this is another one, we had this for review, not having been here for the, let's say historically, to have any history in this, I'd be looking for a motion either to continue this till the next meeting, or if somebody would like to, let's say, take the lead.
all right, I'll make a motion to table this. Our next meeting is the 17th, and I believe it's due January 18th.
Yeah, the 22nd, I think he said today, but, okay.
Okay.
All right.
I don't,
Thank you, Julie.
The annual report is not due till the 22nd.
oh, 22nd?
And
Okay.
that's according to the report put out by the administrator on the 28th.
Okay,
My thing would be to take and continue doing the report in the same type of format. It shows the people who's on the, who is on who has been, if they've been assigned to another committee. It shows where the money for the emergency reserve goes. It shows where the expense goes, a breakdown of the expenses, and the end of the year transfers. The big objection for the 16 budget was the fact that it was too long.
it's not our fault.
Well, the reason it was too long was that the administration chose to do a large amount of end-of-year transfers. It was unprecedented, the amount of transfers that we reviewed, accepted, and rejected. Who's at fault for that? Was it our fault for reporting what we had accepted and rejected? And it ended up having to have the administration edit that? Or was it the administration for having no foresight into how to manage the end of the year or the budgeting process so that there wasn't as many transfers?
Well-
I mean, that's my question.
Make a good point.
I
So
would
we have
leave
a
it- I
motion.
would leave our report exactly as it's been for the last at least 70 years, or 5, and that no one has the right to change our report. It is our report. If somebody makes a change to it, then it's no longer our report, and what we report to the community should be our voice, no one else's. Simple as that. Either that, or we can always send it out on our own.
I think that's the next item.
Yep, okay.
Am I mistaken that, let me go back, and I thought there was something at the last meeting that you had discussed about the annual report and the format, and it was agreed upon then. Am I incorrect on?
I thought we just moved
I
it.
don't know, what I remembered was that Jeff was gonna get in touch with you, and he asked us to review prior minutes to see if there's anything that we wanted to pull out and put into the annual report.
Yeah, because I have a breakdown as to who the members are. Of course, we had some changes. We voted on those. We should show people resigning and people getting on and how they got on. I believe that's what we should show. I also believe that we should show people where their money for emergency reserve is being, what we started out with and what we have allocated out for emergencies, as well as expenses throughout the year. As to, see, one of the things that I looked at this annual report, I just got this today, and I went, it's wrong. Right above it, it says that the advisory had to end up requesting $122 from the emergency reserve because there were so many special town meetings. Then below, in their report that they edited it again, it doesn't show the $122 coming in from the emergency reserve to put in to take and pay for the bills. At least I don't see it. Oh, yes, there is. Excuse me, there is. But it doesn't show as it's coming in. It just shows a balance, increase in balance. I mean, in the end of year transfers, people should know where their money's being transferred from one thing to the next, as well as how many transfers.
Well, if somebody down the road, after we are all long gone someplace, someone might be looking for information about a specific item. And if they go in the annual report, if it went through this committee, it should be on the paper. If it's not there, then you've lost a chunk of history that may be valuable to somebody someday. I'm one of those kinds of people that likes that stuff. And once it's lost, you never get it back, so.
Right, I mean, the end of year transfers,
Yeah.
how are people gonna know how their money's being managed
even if
if we
they-
don't
yeah.
show all the transfers, those are accepted and rejected? I mean, that's,
Right.
I guess, I may be wrong, but that's my opinion.
Right. I don't think the discussion was about changing the format. Okay, I think the discussion was about what was gonna be included in it, and that Jeff was gonna work with you to develop it and then bring it to the committee so we could review it and then vote on it. think
I do
that's-
have all the stuff I ended up getting for him, like I said. There was some documents when I was sick that
Yeah.
I had to ask him for, and I compiled a lot of stuff for him. And also got some stuff ready for him for this coming year, minus the newspaper that you just paid, and anything else that will be handled
Right.
throughout the year.
So I
All right,
think,
so,
yeah,
yeah, I was just gonna say, so why don't we, because we have kind of decided to table it and,
Yep.
you know, we see where this is going, that we either, look for a second on the table for the motion that we have out.
Yeah, I know Jeff had a lot of, thoughts and, on this and would, want to be part of the discussion, so I second the motion to table this until the next meeting.
Okay, so now we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? No? Then Bev,
Yes,
Julie,
yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Will.
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Okay. All right, so that will be till the 17th.
Yeah, that's what I had on my calendar.
And the next item on the agenda is the advisory committee report to the annual town meeting, possible mail-out. I know Jeff was looking into this. He was, I guess, kind of in the middle of it. And this is another one that I don't have anything on.
Yeah, I think maybe we should vote to have it, to address this at the next meeting. You know,
Well, we discussed this at one other meeting, and I don't think we came to a conclusion. We ended up getting some reports from a number of communities, and I guess everybody got copies. And at that particular time, we didn't move forward on it. I think he's looking to end up getting some foresight as to which one we want to do and what we want to include. My cut is, and I saw some of the better ones, include very simple graphs as to the monetary things in there. It showed either graphs or pots, and very little verbiage as to what our recommendation is, where everything is, and what our recommendation is for the expenditures for this coming year. I mean, there's multitudes of reports out there by a lot of communities as to how they end up doing it.
Templeton used to do this, because I gave a copy of one that I had to Jeff. What it was kind of more of the annual town meeting. It was the questions and how what they gave them physically was a report. They said, instead of putting it in the annual town meeting report, it covered some of the budget articles on the town warrant for the annual town meeting. So you could use it for a couple of things. You could do it, so we have to just look at the whole thing and figure out how we want to do it, and what we want to cover.
Doing 13 and 14, there were a couple of, the advisory committee did do a slide presentation to the town and they talked about things to prioritize
Yeah,
for
so
us to
do
end
all
up
that.
voting. One of the things that was prioritized then was the suggestion to end up consolidating the collector and treasurer into one position, like a lot of other communities had done, and to get, and we had end up showing the community that we had gone out and looked at other communities, and actually came up with a budget number, and I believe it was like $55,000. And if you look at the surrounding towns about the same size as to what they were doing, and they had treasurer collectors and what they were paying, that was about the ball game in those communities at that particular time.
Yeah, so we can do a lot of things.
Yeah,
Well, I was gonna say, on this issue, I remember when, Will, you brought in about 10 different, versions of
Yeah.
it and so forth, and we went through, and I don't know if it was Hardwick, one of those, but it was one of the more basic formats that I think overall we kind of agreed was, a good format to follow. And I believe that, that's the objective for us to get the information out to the people in the simplest to understand version possible.
right. And we could also take that version and, well, like the town administrator has a show on cable TV, we could ask cable TV to, so we could do a presentation on what we thought was important and using the documents that we're going to either mail out or whatever.
Some-
You volunteering?
No. But
Some communities,
I'll be there with you.
some communities go to the extent of having a long dissertation and the whole warrant and presenting the warrant and actually have some dialogue within that report that they give to the whole community. And they put it on the website or they mail it out,
Maybe we get people to come to
depending
town
on
hall.
how much money they have in their budget. Some communities, when they end up having it on the website, is they recommend to the townsfolk that they can end up bringing their copy to the annual town meeting so they see what the advisory committee's recommendations are on the warrant as well as an overall report. You can go to that extent. That to me would probably be a later step. We probably need to take and end up ratcheting up over a number of years to get to that particular thing. These are well-established finance committees.
All right.
I was gonna say, I'd be willing to accept the motion to continue this until the next meeting.
I think Bev made the motion, so
Oh.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't hear, sorry, Bev.
Okay. Not
And on
sensitive.
that note, since we have a motion and a second, any further discussion?
Just one note I want to make here. I received another email from the town administrator questioning, you know, what our plans were and how much we budgeted for this, producing them and distributing the booklets. And I realized that one didn't go to the whole distribution either,
Oh,
so,
okay,
so let me forward this one as well.
all right. You wanna try jfarrell59@gmail.com?
Okay.
Okay, because I don't know,
I
something's
was just
happening.
using the ones that, same
Right.
distribution list that Jeff was using, so.
Right.
Can I ask a question? Why is he only I mean, I understand that you're having dialogue with him, but you copy all the members.
Yeah,
He should at least,
I don't know the answer to
typically,
that,
when
so-
you end up having a distribution, you end up replying to all. He's only replying to you, per se, so it just slows down the whole process. It seems counterproductive on his part, being an experienced administrator, to take and end up forwarding something in that manner. It just,
Well, I think there are some advantages to doing it that way, so long as Paul forwards it along to the rest of the committee, so that there's not serial communication and you're not violating the open meeting law. So, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't,
well, he can talk to all of us as a committee.
not through email.
If he talks to us and we respond to him, that's one thing. He can send out any information he
You can
wants.
send out information, you're
Yeah,
right.
and that's where it really, he's sending out information and questions, which come up for discussion at a meeting.
Yep.
It does get a little confusing sometimes.
Right, but you have to be
yeah.
careful that people don't start responding to
Well-
trying to answer the questions
Yep.
Well, and then
without a
it
committee meeting.
can turn Paul into the center of the wagon wheel too, where everybody's coming at Paul with different
Right.
things. So then he's, what's
You're
he
caught in the
supposed to do,
middle.
respond? Oh,
Right.
he's got questions from each one of us, they go out the, and nightmare.
Right,
Yeah, I mean, what I'll do is, forward it and then, respond back that, I'll take it taking it to the committee.
All right, so we have a motion, second. Any further discussion at this point? No? All right, Bev,
Yes.
Julie,
yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Will,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. All right, the next item we have up is capital planning report update. If I'm not mistaken, this was based on the question relating to the town administrator and the management fellow being the designee of the town administrator, and what was necessary, or if there was any, let's say, process with who was going to be showing up, and if there needed to be any communication in that regard. After the meeting the last time, I did a little research, in the bylaw that was created last spring, says, in the way it states it, is that it's the town administrator or his designee. And that's, you know, all the information that I have. I don't know if Jeff got any further, or went any further, I don't know, but, for my purposes, the, you know, town administrator or his designee leaves it as whoever shows up, kind of thing.
I thought it was
Well,
strange. he
I have a
didn't
concern
use-
about that whole committee, and my concern is this. When the bylaw got passed, and I'm gonna take and refresh everybody's memory, you can go back and check this. It's been taped. At one of the selectmen's meeting, the chairman of the capital planning asked where the two individuals from the community applications were, and it was like, they disappeared. They still have not got people from the community on that committee. And he brought up a good thing, and it was like, it was dropped basically, but like a hot potato, as to, well, we don't have them. He ended up knowing that there was applications by a couple people to get on that committee,
They didn't
but-
maybe like who it
but they're not
was.
filled.
Isn't that awful?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I distinctly remember that meeting. I believe it was probably right around the beginning of September. And the 11th comes to mind. Yeah, there was that question, and we were talking about items, and I believe it was the sander is what we were talking about at that time. And it was brought up that they were surprised. I know, one of the selectmen was surprised that there was, you know, two people from the capital planning were here, and, you know, this was the only members of the capital planning committee at the time. The discussion, relating to those two applications was what's going on? Because, you know, one person saying specifically there was two, and the other was like, I don't know, and then it just disappeared, and I also asked on that multiple times after and have never gotten a response.
Can you imagine if somebody applied and they didn't even get the decency of a response?
Right, and I was gonna say, this is
Oh,
something,
awful.
this is something that
Or maybe
I
they
think we
didn't
need
like who they
to,
were and they didn't want them on? Can't do that.
seriously, you know, as a town, change, because we've had, well, I can't say now, because I really don't know, because there's two different, numbers for committee members needed, in two different places on the website, but there's been 14 listed as, vacant since, let's say, last May. And on the new, which was just updated, last week, the new front page thing now on the website saying committee members needed, has 12. But there's no other mention of it, other than, at the occasional advisory committee meeting and at the capital planning meetings that aren't recorded. So, how are people supposed to know
Yeah.
that, you know, 14 positions and 14 members of committees are vacant? You know,
So bad, that's awful.
you know, and it makes it very hard, because capital planning, my belief is that, you know, and take it for what you will, but, if we don't get capital planning functioning, we're never gonna have stable finances in this town.
That's
Just
correct.
period.
Yeah.
It's not a if, it's not a must, and we pay it no respect,
Nope.
capital planning.
Didn't it turn around and get us, though, when the bond guy wanted to know if it had gone to capital
You
planning?
know,
They got away with this for a long time, our administrator, a lot more than one.
if I'm gonna hold off what I was saying till at the end of this here, because I have an issue that kind of back relates to this that I'd like to bring up. Just the capital planning numbers and so forth, how little we pay attention to it. But that's my belief from what, you know, the capital planning, the agenda item here, that's my belief as to what it was. And I believe that's satisfied with the, you know, the bylaw where it says, you know, the TA or, the designee.
Capital planning as a entire process has got a long way to go. That's not to say there hasn't been some changes. Positive, in some respect, very minimal changes that were driven in 13 and 14. The fact that we at least have a list, it's not all encompassing. I put that on the shoulder of town management, that they have not talked to all the committees, all the boards, all the departments, including the school department, that they can put their capital stuff in the capital planning process. I find management at fault. I have found management of this community at fault for years. And things have not changed that much. It has changed a little, but not to where a community needs to be, that they can end up getting this. And you're absolutely right when you have talked in the past about what our assets are, to know, have a list of the assets. Well, that was pushed back in 15 to get a list of the assets, all the assets. Where that went, I have no idea. It should have gone to the capital planning so that we knew. Some people don't understand that buildings are capital assets. Vehicles are capital assets. Depending on the expense of items within this building, and I'll give you an example because we could end up turning all that stuff there for the TV is capital equipment. It's very expensive. It's not something that you go out and you buy every day of the week. It's not like office supplies. Same thing with some of the server and some of the other things within the community that are purchased should be listed so that we have a list of those items when we bought them. Then we can talk to, when somebody comes in and they want to replace them, is, hey, wait a second, we just bought that X amount of years, it has a useful life of 20 years, and you're asking 10 years to replace it down the line. Or you've never put that in, and you've had that, and you don't have it listed as capital.
But just the plan of a community like ours doing huge projects all at one time, more than one, never should have been.
Well, can I?
Yes.
I think it goes to the way our government, our town, local government is set up. In this community, community means kind of pull together, right? We're all in it as one. We're not set up that way. We have turf wars, or people defending their turf. You've got light and water. The water department spent $30,000 to do a study of the water system. There's over $40 million worth of upgrades that need to be done to the water system in the town of Templeton. That's just one department. But they're not considered, they're not included in any of the capital plans. Okay? You're looking at $40 million. Okay? That will eventually, it will come home to roost. You've got the sewer department, which operates separately for some things and not for others. 75% of the old debt was carried by the taxpayers, 25% by the rate users. And now that's switching over, but most of their projects did go before town meeting to take on that debt for those projects. But and then you have the school department that just kind of goes off and does their own thing. So you have all of these different compartmentalized departments. It's not working together. So you can blame the selectmen, which you can do, But until we look at our form of government and try to figure out how to put everything together so you're all working together, your capital plan isn't gonna work. If it doesn't reflect, $40 million worth of water improvements that need to be done. It's not gonna work if it doesn't reflect all of the sewer improvements that need to be done. No matter how it's funded, it's a capital that's part of the town.
Right.
The school is Templeton's school. And, it was like an afterthought, oh yeah, it never went to capital planning. It should have gone to capital planning first. We should have had a realistic idea of what we had for debt. We had no idea. And you push forward, and you keep going, and we don't have a bond rating, and people thought this was a great idea. So, God bless you,
Well, even on the level of the district went out and made a $400,000 purchase this last year. Everybody remember that? For bleachers.
For bleachers, yeah.
Right.
That's not an everyday expense. Yes, it came out of their budget, but that should be, stuff like that should be on the capital plan so people know where their money's going. This is not their money, this is the people's money.
Right, but when you have a regional school district, that was a regional school district project. So that doesn't come before Templeton or Phillipston. That's why you have a school committee, a regional school committee, and you vote those representatives to supposedly represent your interests as far as the school department goes. And those people on school committee made that decision to use $400,000
Yeah.
to repair the bleachers, which were in terrible shape. But
Oh,
then-
I'm not disagreeing with that.
Right. They were in horrible shape. But you also look at, what programs were cut? And programs are what impact student learning.
They went out to borrow money for that over a period of time.
Right. At the same time, they were cutting programs.
Yep.
So, and you elect people to serve on school committee to represent you. And if, I
They
didn't go
do
to the
what they
school
want.
committee meetings.
People don't pay attention.
Well, people don't go to
Yeah.
the meetings and they don't pay attention and people are busy. I didn't go to those meetings, so it's,
Until the community, members of the community start to question where their money's going, this will continue.
right.
And the management, and I blame the people of the community as well as management, because they have not held the management of the community's feet to the fire on how they spend their money. When you can end up buying a building for $400,000 and sell it for $175,000 and lose $225,000 in the process, that is poor management, no matter how you look at it and who's responsible. I don't care who's responsible. We don't lose $225,000 of the taxpayers' money.
Right. But it happens, and it will keep happening until some changes are made. And I think there are, the changes that need to be made, in my opinion, need to be larger and more global.
Yep.
For the whole town, looking at the whole town as a community. And until that happens, I don't see,
You're right on as far as turf. Everybody has, whether it's the departmental or, I can think of one particular building that's very, very turf-oriented, and the fact that they could easily consolidate that, but they will continue to take and end up trying to upgrade that building. It's a building to store equipment. It's not a building that should be used and heated even in the wintertime for that much going on in that particular aspect. And I'm not gonna end up pointing out that particular
There's a couple of them.
group, but I mean, that's really what it is. And you have some of the management team at the very top who basically don't want to take and end up changing that per se, and they will end up going along with that because they are part of that particular group of people.
Right. So you're not gonna see any change there, you know?
Right.
So where does the change come from? I don't know. I mean, this is more, I think I've took it around the bend as far as capital planning not getting any respect. But I don't see that happening until a number of things fall into place.
No, yeah. It's obvious that, it's been a fight because you know, if you look back at, you know, like Wilson, if you take from 213 forward and you just start reading things and looking at things and so forth, you could see that there was an attempt, you know, for something, but it turned into more of just a process. Is all the capital planning had been, is just, oh, it has to go there first. So they have to have a meeting, so they have to go like this, so that it can go there.
How can you run a meeting for over 6 months and not have a quorum? My goodness, wouldn't you think that the chairman would have got off their butt and gone and found someone, stuck them in a chair and said, now you have a job,
Well, you know,
you know?
Well, the selectmen should not be approving projects.
That-
Question number one should be, have you gone to capital planning? The process should start with capital planning,
right.
not with bringing a project before the Board of Selectmen and then going to capital
Right.
planning.
And it also is supposed to be,
You were listening.
Right.
and the process, believe it or not, even though it goes for capital planning, is it comes before the finance or advisory people to review that along with the selectmen.
Well, that was long missed. They missed the turn in the road,
Okay, well, we beat this horse.
rolling right along.
I thought you wanted to add something.
Yeah.
5 years we
I'm
won't be
gonna,
seeing the same.
down the line here, down the line,
All
just
right,
at the
all
end
right.
here. The next item on the agenda is budget versus actual. I didn't get anything new. The last thing I received relating to any budget versus actual was the first quarter of last year. We talked about that a little bit last week. Basically, why are we getting it so late and
Right.
kind of what's the point? I have nothing on it.
No, neither.
My question is why is it done quarterly? Budget to actual should be done monthly, minimum.
Didn't we not vote on that last year, and wasn't that something, I mean, this just rings a bell from the first times I was in here, that we voted on that we also made a motion to suggest that to someone and so forth, and then it was stated that they were gonna be given to us monthly, because we didn't need it bi-weekly, I think it was.
Right.
That we were gonna get it monthly, and now are we gonna get it quarterly?
Maybe,
you
2
know,
months late quarterly, yeah.
I don't know,
So
because, we
the
haven't
next
received
one in
anything
March.
since this.
Right. So we should get the second quarter in March.
Actually, maybe we should send her a note and ask her to send it to us in a timely manner. That wouldn't hurt. Say you asked.
I mean, we can continue to ask these questions
You can read.
as a committee, as concerned citizens. But the people that are viewing this, what few or how many, need to take it end up standing up and saying, hey, I agree or I disagree with what those people are saying. We represent them. If they agree with us, they should be up in arms and saying, that's our money, these people they're right on point as to what they're bringing up.
Yeah, hopefully
Until
somebody will.
until that changes, nothing is going to change. Nothing.
Right. So, maybe after the Vadar training, we'll have access to a budget to actual that we can generate that actually gives us information that we need to
Yeah,
review
that
the
way we
budget.
won't bother anybody.
Well, that's what I was looking for, the presentation that we made to them in which we said, you know, we wanted these reports in this time frame, or alternatively, we said, give us access to the
Yeah.
Right.
system ourselves. So they've agreed, we're getting access to the system, so
you might have something there.
See,
All right.
See, the
Yeah,
problem
yeah,
there,
that
Paul,
does
is
ring a
that
bell.
you asked for their budget to actual on a regular basis, basically. But there was no agreement by them
To what?
to take and end up coming forth with that budget to actual on a regular basis.
Well, no, as I'm saying, they're giving us access to the finance system and, you know, so that we'll be able
Do it
to
ourselves.
generate whatever reports we want ourselves. I
And it's
thought that
co-
was the
and it's
point.
co- In my opinion, it's costing the taxpayers more to have us do it than the accountant who now has an assistant.
That may be, but this is what we agreed to as a committee, and we requested officially of the Board of Selectmen. Are we changing our position now? We don't want to do it ourselves? I mean,
No, I don't
okay,
think
so
anyone's
I
saying
think,
that, but.
I think we're supposed to, you know, see what Vadar is available or can produce for us and give us some independence in this. We're not
Right.
dependent on any other department for the information.
I think that would be nice. Okay. And now, the final thing that I don't have anything on in the agenda is agenda item number 10,
Okay.
which is fiscal year 2019 budget process. And since I was not here for any prior year budget process, I don't even have a clue as to what he was going to talk about other than the process.
Just in past conversations that he's had about the budget process in the committee meetings, is the fact of the budget process is basically the selectmen meeting with departments. And they invite us, not necessarily as a full partner from the past. It's pretty obvious to me, we're not a full partner in the budget process. And every other community that you look at, that the budget process is working good, they're either the finance committee is a full partner, or they have independent hearings on the budget. Example, Town of Harvard, on a Saturday, a full Saturday, brings every department in to take and talk about their budget. And they run a tight ship over there. And by the way, they pay more for a treasurer and an accountant than we do. Okay, they're a little richer community, but they're not as many people either. There are other communities that do the same thing. I mean, when we started out in 13, we had individual meetings with every department or committee on their budget and asked questions as a committee.
When I was on the advisory board, I don't know, it was a long time ago, I don't want to say. Committees came in and met with us and explained what they needed for money and why. And we discussed whether, we could work around it, see what we could do. But we had everyone, they came to the advisory board, sat down, had a discussion.
There was a discussion, when we had the meetings in 13 and 14, there was discussion on individual items as to why do you need that money, what's the breakdown of that? In some cases, it was more or less as, well, we've had that in the past and this is general. Well, why do you need so much of that? I mean, one of the things that, and they're still talking about, is centralized purchasing.
Oh, yeah, we should have done that, how many years ago?
I can think back into 14 when we talked about that.
Jeff
And it was
Beck-
started there,
Jeff
Jeff Ritter
Ritter.
started that.
Yeah.
Boy, we do move slow here.
I mean, most government works slow, but this one here doesn't,
Pathetic, because, but if you add up under supplies, for every department, the number is astronomical. Astronomical. So
When you have-
that, debatable what a supply is.
when I worked for a large company, they had a stockroom,
Oh, yeah, Simplex had
or
one.
a centralized
No.
area, let me say that. where all the office supplies were.
The mailroom. you
And
have
they
to go.
ran a min-max system. You could go in and get material, whether it's pins, pencil, or whatever. Of course, you couldn't go in and get 1,000 pencils or 1,000 pins when you had a department of only 6 or 7 people. So there was some checks and balances there to control costs and not waste money.
Yep.
We don't have that here. There's no checks and balances, and there really is not checks and balances as to how we spend our money, whether it be at annual town meeting or on an individual basis on purchasing office supplies. It got a little bit better in the fact that they went from, what's the company that drives around?
WB
Truck.
Mason?
Yeah, WB Mason. They were a little bit more expensive until, I remember Jeff had a contract with Staples that they can end up, a simple thing like copy paper. And there was a savings. He saves a substantial amount of money.
Well, it's like the turf thing where everybody wants to do their little own thing, and you just can't afford to do that. In 16, well, more like 17, I feel the town missed a golden opportunity. If we had started back then and been serious about running a tight ship, we would be in better shape than we are today.
Yeah.
But we never, ever do it. I mean, we lay people off, we eliminate people when they should be working in the middle of the summer. We get rid of half our highway department. Makes no sense. But then we follow the same procedure. We never fix anything. We maybe put a patch on it with a piece of bubble gum, keep going until the place with the bubble gum
Yeah.
falls off, it gets bigger, so we put a bigger patch on it. But if we had changed some town meeting, or town hall hours, because Luann said nobody comes in at night, we could have cut here and there. And now, from what I understood from that group of people that did our audits, we were supposed to be watching our money. I haven't seen anybody do that. I haven't seen anybody try to do anything to work toward a bond rating. I don't know where all this is gonna come from if we don't do it.
Well, one of the things
It's
that,
not gonna happen.
one of the things that the administrator said that he had put in documentation to S&P and Moody's for bond rating. Because of the economics of this community, number one. The first time I ever heard of a financial advisor was this year, who advised the community not to go for a bond rating because of what? We don't have the things in place that we're supposed to.
Yeah, well, we're not working on it either.
We don't have enough stabilization. How long does it take to get to that money into stabilization before we can end up saying that the bond rating people are gonna say, you have enough at stabilization, and that, okay, it will be a plus that they can end up seeing that. There's not enough checks and balances all the way around. There's not enough checks and balances as to, even on an individual basis for a department, as to what the actual overhead is and what it costs that department to have those employees. And when do I say that? They have, and I'm sure Paul ran into the same thing, is when you work for a large corporation, they come up with a figure that says, per employee, you end up adding 10 or 15% to whatever the salary is, and this is your number for all the overhead that goes along with it, health insurance and all of that that's paid. In addition to that is how much within the building is that how much square footage is that individual taking, and how much does it cost to have that individual in that building? I don't think we'll ever get to that particular level, but those are the type of things that you can end up doing to control your cost and see where they are.
But just,
Well, on that note, that falls right in very nicely with one of the things that I wanted to mention. Because, I'm finding this, and, you know, I've looked at the budget process and so forth from the outside as a citizen and looked at different numbers and the paperwork that's generated and so forth, and I find, and I've found in the past, most of it, if you really look at it, it's kind of useless. Because the accuracy of it is failing. And I'll just, as an example of what Will was just stating here. You know, for many years, we've cut, like Bev stated, we've cut highway. Or we pull highway back, or we don't fill a position or whatever. And from the outside, people look at, the numbers, the bottom line number, what, highway costs us this much, and my roads are like this, oh my God, But, I was looking at some numbers and trying to just get a handle on a few things. And one example that comes up is something that bothers me. I found out through I think it was the email that Paul sent me with the graph, had Alan Mayo saying that we had 49 vehicles. And that was the first time I've seen anything that says we have X amount of vehicles, that there was a definitive number. So then I looked on the capital plan, and with the capital plan and the vehicles on the capital plan, they don't jive with 49 vehicles, which, I kind of expected, but I just don't know where they are. So just looking around and through reading the town administrator reports and so forth, you see that, okay, well, the CONA's car has been worked on at the garage, and the police department's car has been worked on by the mechanic, and the fire department's has been worked on. So, asking some questions and so forth, and you come to find out, it seems like it's just, okay, well, that's highway's responsibility, it's on the highway budget, and, it's all highway, the maintenance, the mechanic is under highway, and all town vehicles and everything just gets sloshed into there. So that hides, in my way of looking at it, costs for the police department, for the fire department, for the CONA, because those vehicles are being fixed, but they're not listed in their budget.
That's correct.
They're listed under the highway's expenses. The repairs for CONA, for the police, for the fire. So it makes it very hard to look at something and trust the number, for me. And I don't know, probably somewhere on somebody's computer somewhere, there's, detail that goes down through, but finding that information seems nigh on impossible. And I think we have a lot of issues, like that in town. And that's another one of the issues with capital planning, because we have, a lot of property in town that's owned by the town of Templeton. We have, from vehicles, buildings, raw land, streets, pipes, anything and everything. And if you look at the numbers used, I don't know how anybody can expect to maintain any of it with the percentage of dollars compared to the value. Let's say we have $100 million in property, well, we're spending, $200,000 to maintain it, or let's say. That's an infinitesimal amount. That's not significant to actually maintain what we have. We're
That's why
just
everything's
keeping it
falling
from
apart.
falling down. Is more the case, and we've done that with vehicles, we've done that with everything, and then we buy it, cash.
Templeton sent to school, they wouldn't fix the roof for years.
Well, one of the best communities as far as stabilization funds is Westminster. They have 5 stabilizations. One of them is building maintenance, vehicle maintenance, general stabilization. I mean, they got a list that you can't believe, and they put money into that every year. One of the things you were talking about keeping track of stuff. At one time, when we first got on to this committee, we had some equipment, believe it or not. A computer and a tape recorder, and that's how the meetings were done in those days, is tape record, so that whoever was the secretary could end up transposing those. It got passed on a couple of years, and has anybody seen a tape recorder? There was two chairmen that, before me getting back on, I don't know where it went. I was given a laptop at one time by Jeff Ritter, and I told him that it was too outdated for us to use. And he actually talked about tablets for individual apartments, that you would end up having a tablet or whatever, that you could end up bringing stuff up at a meeting, whether it be selectmen or any particular thing. There's things that have assets, whether they be capital or not, have disappeared.
Conservation lost something, computer.
Right,
went down.
when somebody leaves, does that mean we go, I think we may have gotten better about this, is going after cell phones. Somebody's given a cell phone, and that once they leave office or whatever, that they actually go after it. At one time, we had vehicles that we were paying insurance on, but the vehicles were taken off the road and scrapped.
Are we not doing that now, maybe?
You don't know. You do not
because
know.
We do, that's one of the things, I mean, we have vehicles that are out of commission that are on the books.
Yep.
So, do
You
we
talked
still
about-
have insurance?
Anyway,
You talked about bond rating. Here's some interesting information I sent to everybody. The feds, this coming year, 25 basic points in Q4, which was up until December. They're expected that they can end up having 3 more this year. That's under the old reserve. Under their new reserve, under Trump's thing, they're looking at being much more hawkish on their approach, and they're looking at 4 increases this year. And there's other entities that are saying they believe we're gonna end up raising the interest rates 5 times rather than the 3 that was initially talked. So at the end of 2018, the federal fund rates are being projected to be 2.25% to 2.25% to 2.75% interest. We're not gonna have a bond rating this year.
how can
Most
we?
likely.
They haven't done anything.
It probably won't be till 19. When 19 comes along, the interest rates are gonna go up again if the economy continues on the present pace it is. And your interest rates are going to end up being 3% plus. So even with an A rating, 3% is going to end up presenting some opportunities for us. And I think I sent that information out to everybody.
Yep.
About the percentage interest rate and what the impact is for the amount that they said they were to borrow for the 28 years at 2.5% to 5%. And it's substantial. At the bottom, at 2.5%, on the average home of 174,000, it's going to end up per thousand increase about $2, which is a $345 increase in your taxes. Anything above that, it goes up exponentially by that percentage. Then we have this year here, it was very interesting. I don't know if everybody else has looked at their tax rate, but my wife ended up getting our tax bill, inversed it during last year. Now, I don't have a very expensive home. I've got a ranch. our taxes went up, and this is without any school bond being taken out, and only 60% increase with the increase in my valuation, about $340 to $350 on the property that I own. What's gonna happen when this comes along? And I ended up doing another one, and I showed Bob this earlier, is that based upon, even this year, based upon the 60 cent increase, and whether you got a 2%, 3%, or 4% increase in your valuation. And where did I get that? I ended up talking with an assessor in another community, and they said, on average, the general single-family homes were anywhere from 2 to 4%. So what I ended up doing is I went, okay, taxes on a $100,000 house are $1,612. Okay, if without any increase in the valuation, they're gonna end up going up to $1,672. Well, that's $60 increase. But if you look at an increase of minimum of 2%, instead of the $1,672, it's $1,705, and that's a very modest home. That's probably one of the real small homes that we have in the community. If you go up to the 4%, the increase, instead of being $60, is $127. I'll send this out to everybody, but I was astonished as to just doing some figures as to different valuations of homes and what the impact is from 16 to 17, 17 to 18, without the school, without the increase in bond.
It's gonna be
the bond.
devastating to some people, absolutely. And new people coming into town, I am willing to bet you they have no clue what's coming down the track. It's gonna be a train wreck.
And just
Email address you want me to try?
Just to add my 2 cents worth to what Will was just saying here, is that from the paperwork that I was reading last week from Luann, based on valuations, the single-family homes in Templeton went up 4.2%.
Okay, so I was low then.
You were low there. The two families went up 31%,
59.
and the three families went up 1.9%. So there's gonna be some surprised people out there. And hopefully, that number just doesn't keep going north.
What gets me is the
Forever.
fact we don't have anything to show for all this, and that's the heartbreaking part.
I just have one other thing to bring up.
All right. Julie?
At the last meeting, we voted 3-2 to put a warrant article on to the selectmen, and I brought it to the office and I got it date stamped. So it was submitted before January 2nd.
So in
One of the
time.
things
And I
that.
did
that-
scan
that-
it and send it to advisory committee, but it never came through, so I don't know.
One of the things about submitting, even as a committee, for a warrant article, is that we submitted some in the past, and the selectmen chose not to put those on.
Right.
Before we leave the 2019 budget process item, I got the invite to the convention of the committees. Did you all receive that?
Oh, yeah. When's that?
That, according to this schedule, is the 16th, Monday the 16th.
That's,
No,
I
it was
believe
a
that's
Tuesday.
Tuesday, isn't it?
It says Monday here. I'm looking at the schedule, the countdown to town meeting schedule that the TA
Well, the
sent out.
9th is on a Tuesday. That's next Tuesday.
Right, yeah, you're right.
16th is the following Tuesday,
I
which
think
is
it's a
7 days later.
Tuesday.
Okay,
That's the 16th.
all right, well, I'm going by the schedule that was distributed here, so.
Okay.
We've got that convention of the committees. Are we all planning to attend that?
Let's see.
And then it's followed by the town administrator starting his one-on-one with the department heads, reviews of their budget submissions. I don't know, are those the working sessions that we attended last year?
I think they are, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I think that's something we should clarify when we meet with all the committees there. So that is my understanding of what the process is going to be. At that point, we get to see what all the department heads have submitted, and we're gonna be able to ask our questions in those sessions if we're part of the working sessions, so any questions or any issues we have with their expenses, those would be the sessions I would expect that, we get our answers.
Nothing precludes the fact that we could end up having separate sessions of our own with those departments. I mean, as I mentioned, other communities do that. It's really up to this committee and the chairman, whether he wants to do that or not. It's been done in the past.
Is there something we can't accomplish in the, with the full, with the Board of Selectmen and the
Well,
town administrator,
well,
all
wait,
total? Why
what
do
I
we need
pointed-
our own separate ones?
What I pointed out was that in the past, we were asked more pertinent questions as to, you've made the submission for X amount of dollars. Can you give us a breakdown on that? And there was a lot of hesitation as to why some of the departments were asking for that amount of money, other than that they had asked for that amount of money the previous year. And I don't think that level of questions has happened at the select, I own that, but I was sick, unfortunately. I didn't get to end up being there to take and ask that level of question as to why, can you give us a breakdown of that expense as to where you're spending it?
Well, I think the issue that came in last year was that we did not get, when we went to those joint meetings, we didn't get the original requests from the departments.
And that was something else that we've officially requested, that we get copies of their
Right.
spreadsheets, so I think what we
Right.
need to be prepared.
So if we get copies of those, then I don't have any problem with this whole process.
Okay.
Because we'll know what the department requested, and then
We get a chance to review it
To
prior
review
to
it.
those working sessions.
that's the theory,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
So if the theory works, then I don't have a problem with that. I
Okay.
don't see a need to have separate questions. But if we don't get that information, we're back to where we were last year.
I agree, and how do we wanna handle that? Do we wanna?
That's
Do we
why.
wanna have I'll be glad to go to the town administrator and say, hey, we'd like to see those submissions. They were supposed to be in by,
Right.
Tuesday,
Tuesday,
yesterday.
so they're all in, right?
Can we see copies of that prior to the working sessions?
Right.
And get confirmation that we're invited to those working sessions?
Yeah.
Okay,
But I
would you
think-
like me to?
Well, that's one of the
Seems
reasons
short.
why we asked, I think we discussed that last year, was to ask for his entire budget and what they had asked for and what he had recommended, so we could look at it, make our adjustments to it, and make a separate column and saying, okay,
Right.
we see that, we disagree with the administration per se, and here's our recommendation. And going forward to the annual town meeting, there should be a separate line with our recommendations, whether we agree with them or change the numbers. It should be our recommendations. And in a lot of cases, we will probably agree with the same figures
Right.
based upon the reviews. In some other instances, we'll say, no, that's too high or too low. Without knowing all of that and being able to play with the individual budgets.
Okay, so make
Electronic-
that a motion. Somebody wanna make that a motion?
Can I hear a motion?
All right, I make a motion that Paul contact the town administrator for the budget submissions for FY19 by department, their original requests.
Electronically.
We asked for spreadsheets, that's right.
Okay.
Copies of the department head budget submissions. And also to confirm that we've been invited to the work sessions.
Exactly.
Okay.
And And I'll second that.
Any further discussion? And I just want to say that, since I didn't get a chance before, that I concur. I think it would be better for the employees if we could do it in one simple session.
Yeah.
Rather than in multiple sessions, because the last thing we need to make them pay for any.
If we get them electronically, it'd be a
Issues.
lot easier for us to play around with them also.
Budget submissions, I'll put Excel.
All
Okay.
right, so we have a motion and a second. No further discussion? Liz? Bev?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Will?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. And on that note, unless anybody has anything else, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved?
I'll second it. Third it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Then it be quiet.
All right.
Yeah.
And
You
we're
should be sleeping.
adjourned.